Amen.
Okay, so yesterday we gave a recap of the advantages that blessings have over prayers and prayers have over blessings, and how a blessing is something that is commanded by the tzaddik versus a prayer is something that we ask for, it's not definite. And the advantage of a prayer is that it's able to elicit a brand new desire from something which is beyond the whole spiritual cosmos. Then we concluded that this is the incredible message of this pasuk. We say in Ashrei, Yeducha Hashem kol maasecha hasdecha v'chucha, all your works shall thank you, and your pious ones will bless you. That although we're talking about a very lofty place, a very high place which is beyond understanding, not just of our understanding, but beyond all kinds of description of understanding of higher realms as well. Yet from there is a commanded bracha. A bracha comes from there, a place which is beyond the entire spiritual cosmos, and it doesn't come down with a request. It comes down with a commandment, with a blessing. Your pious ones will bless you. They will command this divine flow which emanates from this infinite place. And the emphasis is that who could accomplish this? It's the Hasidim. We want to know who the Hasidim are and why they're able to accomplish this. And Rabbi Aryeh is wondering, what do you mean who the Hasidim are? All right, we know what the Hasidim are. There's actually a beautiful teaching, which I'm sure I shared with you before. In the prayer we say before Yishtabach, we say in the mouths of the upright, you are exalted. In the mouths of the tzaddikim, you are blessed. In the tongue of the Hasidim, you are sanctified. And within the holy ones, you are praised. Shmuel Levittin shared a teaching from the generations before that this pasuk, this sentence in our prayers, refers to the four kinds of Jews in history. There are the upright ones that existed before the Torah existed. Then before the Torah was given. Then there are the tzaddikim who received the Torah. Then there are the Hasidim after the Baal Shem Tov. And there are Kedoshim. The holy ones refer to how we will be after Mashiach comes. That's one translation of that sentence of davening. But these words, tzaddikim, yesharim, chasidim, kedoshim, as we shall see, and I sent it on the chat as well, it's not referring to people that daven with nusach hari, as the tongue-in-cheek sentence in Lubavitch was, just because you say Hoidu before Baruch Sha'amar, it doesn't make you into a chassid. Our custom is that we say Hoidu before Baruch Sha'amar, others say Baruch Sha'amar before Hoidu. So just because you say Hoidu before Baruch Sha'amar doesn't make you into a chassid. A chassid means something. You need a certain way of serving Hashem. So who are the Hasidim? Why is it that their service of Hashem is able to accomplish that which tzaddikim cannot? Because even tzaddikim, as we shall see, are only able to command the blessing that is in its source. And the Hasidim are able to summon a new desire of Hashem with a commandment, with a bracha, with the emphasis of the word bracha is that it's something that we're commanding. I bless you, so shall be to you. I'm not asking, I'm saying this is what's going to happen. I'm blessing you. This is what's going to happen. So who are the Hasidim? Why are they able to accomplish this? And how can we get into that camp? Well, let's continue on in the PDF that I sent. We are on page Samach Zayin Ois Hey. But Tzarech Lahav, need to understand the Chassid L'mayla Mitzadik. A Chassid is someone who is above the level of a tzaddik. As the Rebbe Rashab explains in his Maamar, the three levels of tzaddik, yashar, and chassid. The yashar l'mayim tzaddik, a yashar, a straight one, is higher than the level of a tzaddik, but chassid l'mayim gam yashar, and a chassid is someone who surpasses the level of yashar as well. So it's tzaddik is the lowest, then comes yashar, then comes chassid. Tzaddik being the lowest is something that explains other things in Torah. For example, there are only two people in the Torah that are called tzaddik, And even those two people that are called tzaddik, we find some contention if they're really tzaddikim. The two people which are called tzaddik are Noach, and we have an argument when the Torah says Noach is a tzaddik, was it tzaddik just in his generation or all generations? And Yosef, in the Haftorah of this week, it says, because they sold the tzaddik for shoes. Yosef is called Yosef HaTzaddik, the only two people. And yet, concerning Yosef also, when it says in the Torah that Yosef went into the house when there was no one there to do his work, there are some that interpret this as a very pure sentiment of Yosef just to focus on what he needs to do. And there are others, Dershim Lagnai, that he actually wanted to, Chas v'Shalom, sin with the wife of Potiphar. So how come the only people in the Torah which are called tzaddik are given such a hard time? So the Rebbe says about Noach, and Malbach says something similar about Yosef, that the word Torah means instruction. So the Torah wants us to know how we should view a tzaddik. You know what a tzaddik is? A tzaddik is someone who is imanu hayisem. Imanu hayisem is a term the Talmud uses about Edom Zayimim. In order for witnesses to be disproven, so other witnesses can't disprove the testimony of witnesses in Torah. The only way they could disprove witnesses is by saying, you were with us. This testimony that you're saying may be true or maybe not true, but you certainly wouldn't know about this because you were with us at the same time you're saying this testimony. They're called Edom Zayimim. So their intro to their testimony is, you were with us. In a similar way, the Rebbe once told the Rabbi Pliskin al Vashalom that when you say a story by a Fabrengen, it's important not just to say stories of tzaddikim, say stories of Hasidim. Why? Because if you say a story of the Rebbes, people say, that's who the Rebbes do. The Rebbes could do those kind of things. That's not something that I could do. So to talk about Hasidim, which are Manu Hayisim, they're with us, they're in the same playing field, they're in the same plane of existence as us. So the reason why some of these scholars, some of the Talmudists interpret the story of Noach, when the Torah calls him a tzaddik, the Talmud interprets this as something negative, is in order to make it relatable to us. Why is the Torah pointing out that he's a tzaddik? Because the Torah wants us to tell us he isn't that distant from us. He imanu, he is him. He is with us in the same playing field. And the same is also regarding Yosef. The Torah wants, when the Torah calls him a tzaddik, the Torah wants us to learn something. He is in the same playing field as us. He is someone who could have made a mistake, so to speak. And at only the last moment he held himself back. The Torah is deliberately using that term because the Torah wants us to say, I could do that too. So that's what the Maamar says about Yosef. Similar thing is regarding the discussion over here about tzaddik asher chassid. Tzaddik is the lowest level. Although in our context, the Rebbe Rashab's explanation of tzaddik doesn't say that tzaddik is someone who withstands sin, but he still calls the tzaddik the lowest level. What is the tzaddik in the context of the conversation here? Tzaddik is the Jewish people all called tzaddikim. Why are we called tzaddikim? Because we all perform mitzvahs, and mitzvahs bring down godly light to the world. So the word tzaddik is about our ability to bring down a godly light of Hashem into a container, into a mitzvah, in a way that the mitzvah can hold on to this, into this light. That's the meaning of tzaddik. What's yashar? Yashar is something higher. What's yashar? Yashar, as says in Hayom Yom, is someone who withstands sin. Yashar is referring to someone who's able to overcome a lo saseh, and that's higher than a tzaddik. So although the Rebbe uses a different terminology, still Yashar is something that's considered to be a more loftier thing. Why is it loftier to withhold back from sin than it is to do a mitzvah? And so surprisingly, a mitzvah, because it's a positive action, it has a container that itself denotes how the mitzvah has a beginning and an end, versus holding back from an action is connected to something which is transcendent. In Hasidic lexicon, there's something called hasagas hachiyuv, knowing what something is, and there's hasagas hashila, knowing what something isn't. If something could be defined, that means it's something which is in the realm of logic. If something cannot be defined, and I'm only able to say what it isn't, then I'm talking about something which is higher, more aloof. So the example Hasidim give is someone's walking down the street and they get closer to you, and you say, "Who is that man? I know that's not. I know that's not him. It's not Zev. It's not Dr. Bressman. It's not. I don't know who that is." That's Hasaga Ashlila. With various things that we do know, we could interpret how Hashem is beyond whatever we understand. When we say Hashem is a chacham, for example, Hashem is wise. So the Zohar says his wisdom is not the wisdom that we could possibly know. His wisdom is beyond our wisdom. But the highest interpretation of wisdom that we would have, we know Hashem is beyond that. So we're using our wisdom as a pedestal to try to have an inkling and what it means that Hashem is wise. So we know that Hashem is not the opposite of wisdom. We know that. So we're using our terms and our things that we know about to understand something which is beyond our logic. So because because the mitzvahs Hashem told us not to do involve us holding back, not in action, they connect to and they draw down something which is beyond something that can be conveyed and brought down into a finite, limited mitzvah. It says in a similar thing about the strings of tzitzis. The strings of tzitzis have more holiness than the talis does. The talis doesn't have the holiness the strings of tzitzis do. And yet, that's because the talis represents the infinite light of Hashem, that we wrap ourselves with the talis. It's a transcendent light. And because it's transcendent, it doesn't connect as well with the physical talis versus the tzitzis, which just like there are strings that emanate from the talis physically, they're a more contracted light. And because they're more contracted, they're more defined, and they're more able, and the holiness in them is something that stays and is permanent and resides in the world. So Yashar, who is called because he withholds himself from sin, brings down a loftier light of Hashem. Then there is a higher level called Tamim, as in Hayom that I sent you, which is earnestness. And as we shall see, Chassid, Hayom mentions 3 levels within Chassid. But for our purposes, we're focusing on the highest level of Chassid. And the highest level of Chassid is someone who is interested only in serving Hashem. He's not interested in satisfying his own desire. He's interested in, as Chassidim use expression, I heard this from Rabbi Wurzburg, Gesund. I don't know where he got it from, but he said Chassidim are those who think about the Eibishter. Chassidim think about the Eibishter. That's what a Chassid is. And the definition of a Chassid in the is someone who's interested in giving to Hashem. Okay, so who are the ones who are able to cause this incredible divine flow that's beyond the blessing, a regular blessing, and beyond the prayer? It's specifically the Chassidim. And the question is, why? Why only Chassidim can do this? Why can't Tzaddikim do this? Why can't Yesharim do this? So let's read further. When it comes to it seems from this pasuk, in order to bring down from this place that is beyond understanding, from the infinite light of Hashem, beyond the entire chain of the spiritual cosmos, it's only with the power of the Chassidim who are beyond the high level of tzaddikim. We need to understand. This seems to contradict the Talmud. The Talmud says about tzaddikim, even tzaddikim, that Hashem makes a decree and a tzaddik can annul the decree of Hashem. And the way that tzaddik nullifies the decree of Hashem is not by his request, rather it's by his commandment. Hashem makes a decree, and the tzaddik says the decree is over. The decree is batal. I heard the biggest mysterious. But if you remind me later, I'll send a link where the Rebbe actually causes. I mentioned yesterday, the previous Rebbe did resurrection of the dead. There's a famous story with our Rebbe and Rabbi Ormland from Eretz Yisrael, how the Rebbe actually caused a medical tchias hamesim with him, and there's many other stories. But what's unique about this story is, in this story, the Rebbe tells his father at one point, the gzeira is over, the decree is over. A tzaddik nullifies a decree by his word. He says the decree is over and the decree is over. The gzeira is bottled. The gzeira is bottled. I never told him. The Rebbe told his father, he called up the Rebbe, my son is dead. The decree is bottled. The decree is over. Okay, so.
Can you hear me?
That's the power of a tzaddik. He's able to nullify a decree. Hashem says something, a tzaddik can nullify. By his command. By him commanding the decree should be nullified, it becomes batal. It becomes nullified. It says in the Torah, a tzaddik rules with his fear of Hashem. Tzaddik moishel b'yiras halakim. The simple meaning of that is that by virtue. Oh, let me turn on the sound. I'm sorry, I can't hear Zev. I apologize. What are you saying, Zev?
Is it similar to, they say, the greatest Mesiras Nefesh a tzaddik has is not to decree that Mashiach come, because Hashem would have to listen. So they have to take that step back, even though they know that they can decree and Mashiach would come. But with that kind of power, you'd think that you'd use immediately make that decree, but you got to just let Hashem take his path. So it's the greatest Mesiras Nefesh.
It's hard for us to relate to that. I mean, there's a famous story with the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was talking about the tzaddikim. I know what the source of the story is, or if it's a true story, but the way the story is told is that the Alter Rebbe was talking about the tzaddikim about what they would do if they were the Eibishter. Nitzchak is saying, if I were the Eibishter, I will give the Yidden this, I'll give the Yidden that. Richard Springle V'Shalom, he's telling us once about the situation, the dormitory in 770, like, if it's up to me, guys, you'd all have a jacuzzi in your room, whatever. So the Alter Rebbe, he said, if I were the Eibishter, if I were Hashem, I would do exactly what Hashem is doing. Whatever, it's a different subject. But anyways, the tzaddik moishel b'yiras halakim, a tzaddik rules with his fear of heaven, simply means that because the tzaddik has fear of heaven, he has an impact on the world. As it says in the Gemara, anyone who has fear of heaven, his words are heard. Anyone who has yiras shamayim, his words are heard. I don't know if it's a story with the Rebbe, the Marash, I don't remember. That someone didn't want to listen to them, and they put their hand over their forehead, somehow summoning a higher level of fear of heaven, and that caused a person to listen to them, whatever that means. So because of his great reverence for Hashem, he has an impact in the world. That's one meaning of tzaddik meishel b'yiras halakim. Another meaning of it is that a tzaddik, so to speak, dominates not just others with his fear of Hashem, he dominates, so to speak, the will of Hashem. Hashem makes a decree, and a tzaddik is able to nullify the decree. As the famous story of Eliyahu Navi that we'll get to later in this story, in this sikha, about how Eliyahu Navi was asked by the sages when they ruled the halacha against Hashem's ruling. We'll get to that later. They asked Eliyahu Navi, what is Hashem doing now that we've ruled the paskin halacha against what he said? So Eliyahu Navi said, Hashem is happy and he's laughing and he's saying, my sons have been victorious over me. So we'll get to that later, what that means. But for right now, a tzaddik makes a decree against the words that Hashem has said. Hashem makes a decree, and a tzaddik nullifies that decree. Our question is,
can I ask you a question?
Hold on a second. It seems then that a tzaddik has these two virtues as well. First of all, a tzaddik is able to make a decree and summon something from above the entire spiritual cosmos, and this new hamshach, this new divine flow, is not coming through his request, it's coming through his command. So we see tzaddikim could do the same thing. So why? We say only chassidim could do this. We see from this Gemara that tzaddikim have the same power, not just chassidim. Even tzaddikim, they are able to make a decree, they're able to nullify a decree, they're able to change things as they are in the spiritual cosmos. And how they do that, not with their request, not with their prayer, but with their command. But from the language of the pasuk, it seems that the ability to do this is only in the hands of those who are called chassidim, not those who are called tzaddikim, something which is beyond the level of tzaddik. So our question is, why does it say that when it seems like from the Gemara that tzaddikim could do the same thing? Yes, Rabbi, what's your question?
In the example you gave of the Rebbe saying to the father that the decree is nullified,
yeah,
it could also be that he didn't cause the decree to be changed. It could be from those words that he could have simply seen that the decree had been nullified.
You're right. You're right. I definitely don't know what's going on in that story, but it just seems like if you hear the
Okay.
whole story, it seems like that there was the boy was heading one place, and then he asked everyone for a bracha, and things were changed around because I never told the guy to remind me later. I'll post this story in the chat. You'll see the context. You'll see why I think. I mean, obviously I would never know, but why I think that there was actually something going on over there. Okay. Maamar, next paragraph. So anyone get the question? The question is why we think only the power of Hasidim. It seems like it's the power of Hasidim. It seems like it's the power of tzaddikim as well. We'll understand this based upon what the Rebbe Rasha mentions in his Maamar. The Rebbe Rasha mentions the teaching of the Zohar. The Zohar says, who is a Chassid? A Chassid is someone who does kindness with his creator. A chassid is someone who does not merely try to serve himself and to satisfy his own spiritual yearning to be close to Hashem. Rather, a chassid is someone whose service of Hashem is for the sake of Hashem. The word Betanya, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya in chapter 10, that a chassid is someone who is serving Hashem and is interested in bringing godliness to the world, because that's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants a home in this world, and that's what his goal is in doing mitzvahs, that this should satisfy the Eibishter's desire, not his own desire. The Rebbe Rashab says in that discourse that Hasidim are able to elicit from the innermost part of Atik. What is the innermost part of Atik? What does Atik mean, period? What's the innermost part of Atik? The Rebbe's brother famously said that any level of godliness he's not able to explain in Yiddish, that means he doesn't understand it. If he's not able to translate and bring it down, he's not able to translate it. That means he doesn't get it. So this word, actually, we know the translation of the word Atik. Atik has 3 translations. Atik means old, Atik means a copy, and Atik means removed. And all three translations are pointing to the same thing. There was a tzimtzum in which Hashem seems, it's not to be taken literally, but it seems that Hashem has removed all of his light from what has then become a vacuum. After this tzimtzum, Hashem then shines through the tzimtzum, through this contraction, a new light, chazer v'heir. This new light has, of course, a whole flow of different levels in this new flow of light. There's a whole hishtalshus, there's a whole chain of levels. The first is Atik. Atik is called Atik. It's a copy, so to speak, of what existed before the Tzimtzum. It mirrors what the truth of Hashem that existed before the Tzimtzum is. That's what the word Atik denotes. Perhaps you could say the words kiviyachol. It's the way we would term the essence of godliness in a post-Tzimtzum era. After Tzimtzum, this is what we call the essence of godliness. Of course, it's not really the essence of godliness because after the Tzimtzum, but in a post-Tzimtzum scenario, this is a copy of what was before. And that's why it's called distant. Distant, of course, not geographically, but it's incomparably higher than all the subsequent spheres. In Atik itself, and that's why it's called old in the sense that it's beyond it's the first revelation of godliness after the Tzimtzum. And the reason why there is such a sorry, hold on a second. Okay, so that's what the word Atik means. Why? And in Atik itself, there are 2 levels. There is chitzonius Atik and there's pnimius Atik. There is external level of Atik and the pnimius level of Atik. Let's translate this in ourselves for a second. In ourselves, there is also an Atik. Atik is our power of pleasure. Neighboring Atik is the level called Arich. Arich is our power of desire. The Rebbe Rashab wrote a series of discourses about Atik and Arich, and he actually burned them all. We do have many discourses that are discussing this, but before Actually, I'm not sure if it was actually the Rebbe Rashab, the Friedrich, I think it was the Rebbe Rashab. He wrote 30 pages, very deep explanation of these two levels, which is higher, which is lower. Some call it the Hasidic roller coaster, because on the one hand, you could say that you desire what you have pleasure from, or you could say you have pleasure from what you desire. So which comes first? And there's a whole different, there's many ways of looking at it. So the Rebbe Rashab burnt it because he felt it was too intellectual. The godliness wasn't coming through as much as he wanted it to. Anyways, so we have in ourselves desire and pleasure, and in general, pleasure, atik, is deeper than desire, and desire is a result of pleasure. So in pleasure itself, there's also levels. There's a pnimius atik, our innermost pleasure. And the innermost pleasure of a Jew, of course, is in godliness. So the pnimius atik, the innermost part of atik, is what Hasidim connect to. Hasidim able to draw down from pnimius atik. Why do Hasidim have that distinction? So let's read further. And this is why Hasidim are called Hasidim, and they're higher than the level of tzaddikim, higher level of Yesharim, because they elicit from a higher place than they do. Tzaddikim draw down from the external level of keser. Both arich and atik, both desire and pleasure, are transcendent powers. Unlike our intellect and our natural feelings and our power of obedience to Hashem, which are all have certain parts of our body and certain parts of our soul that define them, desire and pleasure envelop us. There's no part of the body which is associated more with pleasure than others. Like Rabbi Yisrael Never, my great-grandfather used to say that he doesn't like smelling tobacco. He says there's one organ in the body that does not interested in pleasure. You have to stuff that up with pleasure too. Anyways, but the desire and pleasure are enveloped the entire body. They're not related to a certain part of the body. But they're called, in Kabbalah, they're called the crown. Just like a crown sits on top of the head, it's something which is above the head, it's not part of the body. So too, desire and pleasure are transcendent powers. Desire, will, is chitzonius, it's external, and pleasure is internal. So tzaddikim, they elicit from the external part of the crown. They get from the level called desire. Yesharim get from a higher part of the crown, they get from the level of pleasure. And Hasidim, they get from the innermost part of Hashem's pleasure. They connect to God's deepest pleasure through their service of Hashem. Why? Hasidim, through their efforts in serving of Hashem, they draw down from the innermost part of Atik. Because they are serving Hashem and going beyond themselves completely, because they lose themselves in their service of Hashem, therefore they draw down from a place which is beyond existence. Just like they forget about their own existence, therefore they don't just draw down from the light of Hashem that is about creation or a source for creation. They draw down from the essence of godliness, which is beyond creation completely. I don't know if you heard the story I shared on Motzei Shabbos, not the story I shared yesterday, but the story is very briefly. The Alter Rebbe was once shown when he was in prison some artwork, and he pointed to one. The people, the ministers were so impressed by the Alter Rebbe, they wanted to hear his opinion about different things, and they showed him different artwork. And the Alter Rebbe said about one particular piece of artwork that this was special. So why is it special? Is because the artist forgot about himself in this drawing. He forgot about himself. In a similar way, a chassid forgets about himself. A chassid thinks about Hashem. Because he forgets, and Alter Rebbe said, just to end that thought, in order to create something brand new, you have to forget about yourself. Yesh miyesh yefsher. To create something brand new from something which already exists won't work. You're just going to adapt whatever exists before and change it somewhat. To have a brand new existence, you need to go beyond existence in order to create something new. You can't go from existence A and create existence B. You have to forget about yourself to create something brand new. In a similar way, the chassid is someone who forgets about himself completely and serves Hashem only for the sake of Hashem, and therefore he elicits and draws down God's essence. That's why only chassidim are connect to Pnimius Atik. How this relates to our question about tzaddikim and chassid, what they are able to accomplish regarding God's desire, we'll get to Mr. Hashem hopefully tomorrow. That's what I wanted to share today. Any questions or comments? All right, great day, Reb Aryeh. Great day, Reb Beryl. Great day, David. Great day, Menachem Mendel. Great day, Reb Zev. Suras Davis. Chaim Peretz, sei gesund.